Today we're looking at lesson 5.2 on solving linear inequalities using multiplication and division. So lesson 5.1 was solving linear inequalities using addition and subtraction. The same rules apply as we did when solving linear inequalities using those two operations. We're just going to be using multiplication and division now. So you want to think about solving what you'd do, actually, about solving a regular equation. And the steps for solving a regular equation will continue to be the steps for solving inequalities. The only thing that you have to start paying attention to after this lesson is when you are multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So if you multiply or divide each side of an inequality by a negative number, so while you're solving, the inequality symbol changes direction, or I like to say it flips. So we're going to be doing some examples of when you flip the sign and when you do not flip the sign. The first example is a word problem. We're going to try to write an inequality here and solve. So this is talking about Mount Kinabalu in Malaysia, and it has the greatest concentration of wild orchids on Earth. It says it contains more than 750 species, or about 1/4 of all orchid species. So it's asking us how many orchid species are there in Malaysia. So the first thing we need to do is figure out our total. And our total is going to be 750 species. And it says it contains more than 750 species, which is going to give us our inequality symbol. So more than represents greater than. So we're going to say greater than 750 if we're setting this up as an inequality. If we go back to the problem, it says that's about 1/4 of all orchid species, and we don't know how many orchid species, so that's going to be our variable. But if we think of 1/4 of, that's going to give us what we multiply by our variable. Since it's an of, we know it's multiplication. We have 1/4 of the orchid species, which we don't know, so we can put as x, and that would create our inequality. So we're going to solve our inequality. There's no negative signs involved here, so we're going to solve this just like this would be a regular equation. So we need to get x by itself. We need to multiply by the reciprocal to do that, which is 4/1. And we're going to multiply by 4/1, or 4, on both sides. Now we did not multiply by a negative number, so we're not going to get, we're not going to change the direction of the symbol. So our answer is going to be x is greater than, or there are more than 3,000, because 750 times 4 would be 3,000 orchid species in Malaysia. Next, we're asked to solve these inequalities and also graph them on a number line. So we're going to solve for the variable just like we would if we would be solving an equation. So we're going to solve for n here. We need to get n by itself. That means this is n divided by 6. That means we need to multiply to get the n by itself. Now, since the entire thing is negative, we're going to apply the negative symbol to the 6, which makes the whole process easier at the end. So whenever you're choosing to apply the negative symbol, whether you apply it to a variable or the number, always choose to apply it to the number in a division problem, or I'm sorry, in a fraction. So we're going to apply it to the number. So we're really multiplying by -6 on both sides. Now, since we multiplied by -6, that is going to be when we flip or change direction for the inequality symbol. So notice I changed the direction or flipped the inequality symbol to face the other direction. And then I have 8 times -6, and that would give me my answer of -48. Now I'm creating my number line the same way I would with addition and subtraction. So I'd come up with a few numbers here. Remember, negative numbers are opposite thinking, so the lower the number, the higher it is actually. So, since I have an equal to line underneath my symbol, that means I'm going to have a closed circle at negative 48, and then it reads as greater than, so that means I need to go to the right. So there would be my number line. Next problem, you have a fraction that's negative, and you have negative 4/3 p is greater than negative 10, so we're going to get p by itself. We need to multiply by the reciprocal for that one to get p by itself. So I'm going to multiply by negative 3/4. And again, I multiplied by a negative. So that is going to flip my symbol to face the other direction. So then I have negative 30 over 4, or positive 30 over 4, which I could simplify to 15 over 2, or 7.5. But notice that I flipped my symbol first, because I multiplied by a negative number. Here, we're trying to get m by itself, so we need to get 1/5 canceled out. Again, we have a fraction, so we multiply by the reciprocal to cancel it out. But this is a positive number, so I'm multiplying by positive 5 over 1. That'll get me, that'll get me m by itself. But I multiplied by a positive number, so my symbol is going to stay the same direction, even though my answer is negative 15. Now, if I were to graph this, I would need to use a closed circle. Because it is including the answer, so a closed circle at negative 15. And I'd be pointing my arrow to the right for greater than. The next problem has you solve for t. You need to get 3/5 away from the t, so I need to multiply by 5/3. And I'm going to do that on both sides. Again, I'm not multiplying by a negative, nor is my answer negative, so I don't need to do anything but bring down the symbol, just the way that it is. And my fraction is as simplified as it can be, so I can leave it as t is less than 25 over 3. Now, if I were to graph this and I have a fraction or a decimal, I would just need to make sure my numbers match my answer. So maybe go by thirds here. I could do 25 thirds, 26 thirds, 27 thirds, and just make each fraction or each number a fraction. And then I would need to put an open circle at 25 over 3 because it does not include our answer and there's no equal to line underneath the symbol. So I leave it open circle and it says less than, so I remember that less than is to the left. Here we're solving for p. We need to cancel out the 8. This is 8 times p, so I need to divide by 8. And I would get p is less than or equal to 58 over 8, which I could simplify slightly to be 29 over 4. And again, if I'm trying to put this on a number line, I'm just going to go by fourths. So 29 fourths, 30 fourths, 31 fourths, and so on. I need a closed circle because my symbol is equal to line underneath, and it's less than, so it goes to the left. The next one, solving for r. I need to divide by 6 on both sides. I have r, if I'm reading from the variable, is less than or equal to -7. Notice though that I did not divide by a negative even though my answer is negative, so I'm not flipping the symbol. So if I read from the variable side so that I can graph this, that means that it's going to say that it's less than or equal to 7. So r is less than or equal to means a closed circle going towards the left. 2 more problems. You have solving for h here, so I'm going to get h by itself by dividing by -12. Since I divided by a negative, just like when I multiplied by a negative, my symbol changes direction. So I'm flipping my symbol. I need to simplify that fraction, and I get -5/4. And again, I can just make my scale by fourths. So I'm going to put an open circle at -5/4 since there's no line underneath the symbol. And it's to the left because it reads less than now since I flipped the symbol. And then the last one, I need to get n by itself, so I need to multiply by the reciprocal. Notice I'm multiplying by a negative number, or -2, so that means I need to flip my symbol. And I get -12. If I read that, it says n is greater than or equal to -12. So I need to put a closed circle at -12, and this time it goes to the right. And that concludes Lesson 5-2.